Hey there, everybody. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Yes, that's it. And in the co-captain's chair today, Mr. George Lamie. What's happening, my friend?
Good on, dude.
It's going. It's going. We're going to talk a little Redemption today. So we're going to rank the 7 studio albums of Redemption. So if there's anybody watching who are like, I don't know who Redemption is, well, shame on you if you're saying that. So if you like progressive metal, with lots of melody, lots of hooks, super crunchy guitar riffs, shredding guitar solos, a lot of keyboards, and you like kind of, Dream Theater and Fate's Warning, because one of the guys is from Fate's Warning, and that sort of thing. Big epic songs, lots of guitar riff-o-rama, just an amazing songs, and really, really consistent albums. You have come to the right place. So this is the band that we can give them, I guess, a little history here before we get started, George. So started out by Nick Van Dyke, guitarist, keyboard player, songwriter, and Bernie Versailles on guitar. Probably some of you have heard that name, Bernie Versailles, before. He has been around the scene for quite a bit. Those are kind of the guys who started the band. Various folks came and went early on, but then they centered on the lineup of those two guys with Ray Alder, with Chris Quirarte, is that how he says his name, on drums?
Yeah.
And then Sean Andrews on bass has been like the kind of long-standing lineup, although that has been tested in recent years, and we'll kind of get to that as we go through the album. So for the most part, they had a pretty consistent lineup, but that has changed a little bit in recent years. So and we'll, as we go through these albums, we'll go through that. So we got 7 studio albums in total. They got a couple live albums, which are also worth checking out, but we're not going to talk about those today. And I will have George kick us off with his number 7.
So my number 7 is the self-titled debut in 2003. Yeah, they come out of the blue. It's an unknown guy, and the rest of the album is all these known guys. So it's like, what's up with this guy? You know, he's got connections in the industry. It's got the singer from Steel Prophet, Rick Mathiasen, I think it's how it's.
Yeah, I think that's how he says his name. Yeah.
Ray Alder guests on one song. And then it's got the drummer from Symphony X, Jason Rulo, and Bernie Versailles was in Agent Steel. I mean, it's like kind of almost like an all-star thing with this nobody that's kind of manning the helm, you know? So it was a kind of an interesting configuration. I would say in retrospect, it's your quintessential getting it together album. They're not what they're going to be, you know, it's kind of a work in progress. I never did get to owning it because it just did not click with me at any point. I had a CDR from a friend, and I was just very interested in the thought of it, but just never clicked in. So when the later albums came out, I was kind of surprised they had taken a fairly quantum leap to me. So, but I know a lot of people like it, so I'll go with that one in the 7 slot.
Yeah, more on that later. But yeah, I mean, when that first came out, that was they were signed to Sensory Records. So of course, that's Ken Golden's like kind of prog metal part of the Laser's Edge label, and it was kind of looked at as a project, which these days not that uncommon, right? Because look at like Frontiers Records is doing that sort of thing all the time, and so many of these like super band projects turn out to be like kind of one and done, whereas Redemption took that first album and said, all right, we're going to kind of do this full time, I think, or as much full time as we possibly can do. So yeah. All right. I'll get to that in a little bit. So I'm going to go, and I will preface my ranking here. This was really difficult because again, like some of the more recent ones we've done, there really are no bad albums here. And all of these are, in my opinion, really high quality. But there are a couple, I think, that kind of rise above the others, and I'll kind of explain why. So I'm going to go with my bottom 2 are really tough. I had a hard time. I went back and forth a couple of times, but I'm going to go with The Art of Loss from 2016 as my number 7. Really fine album. This is their 6th album overall. This is the first album without Bernie on lead guitars. He had an aneurysm in, I think, 2014 or something like that. So he's been basically out of commission from playing with these guys. And you can kind of feel his absence here a little bit. This band has had, I mean, top-notch guitar riffs, rhythm guitars, lead guitars throughout their entire history. There's something to be said about Bernie and Nick working together that seeps through every one of their albums together. It's not on this album. I find this album a little bit less guitar heavy. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think that the keyboards are amazing. It's very symphonic. The songs are great, as always. They brought in a bunch of other guys to help out with lead guitars. So you got Simone Mulleroni from DGM plays lead guitars in here. You got a bunch of ex-Megadeth guys. You got Chris Poland, Marty Friedman, and Chris Broderick, okay, all helping out with guitar leads. Nick's a damn good lead guitarist too. So why he feels the need to bring in all these guys, I don't know, but they sound spectacular on here. So you can't really complain much. The title track, melodic. You got Slouching Towards Bethlehem. It's got big crunchy guitars. Damaged has a lot of hooks, a little mellower, not quite as heavy, a lot of keyboards on that. Hope Dies Last, big and symphonic. Center of Fire is kind of dark. You got a really good cover of The Who's Love Reign Over Me with John Bush dueling it out with Ray Alder on vocals. That's one of the best covers I've heard in recent years. It's just so good. And then you've got the fiery Rockin' 30 Silver, and then the 22-minute epic At Day's End, which for me, this band has always done epic songs really well. I think the song is a little too long. There's too many kind of meandering keyboard interludes for my money, but there's some amazing guitar solos on it. So I think all the guys, all the ex-Megadeth guys played solos on this particular track. I think it's a strong album. I don't think it's among their best though. And this is Ray's last as a lead vocalist with the band, because ironically, he said he wanted to dedicate all of his time exclusively to Fates Warning. And then Fates Warning basically just released what's supposed to be their final album. So I guess he's not doing anything with Fates Warning anymore. So I'm like, well, why not just go back to these guys? But apparently that's not going to be the case. So I don't know what Ray's going to be doing going forward, but I guess that will to be determined at this point. So yeah, The Art of Loss, fine album. I like it a lot. I think it's my least favorite out of all of them. Back to you.
Ray's new band is called A to Z. He's back with Mark Zonder and a couple of guys from the Netherlands, Jupe Walters and Vivian Lalu, and Philip Bino on bass. And,
wow. Okay. Learn something new every day. I had not heard that. So that sounds dynamite. Wow.
Yeah, I think the record is done already, but I think they're shopping labels or something.
Okay. Well, interesting how he's forming another band with Mark Zonder, because Mark Zonder is working on finishing up the new Spirits of Fire album. It's amazing how some of these guys have their feet in 10 different things. And how
I think they feel like they have to just try and, I don't know, keep their name out there. And I
guess. Well, you got a guy like Mike Portnoy who raises the bar, right? So right. If he can do it, anybody can do it. Well, maybe not quite like that, but yeah. A to Z. Okay, I'll look out for that. That's it. Jupe Walters.
He's good. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yep. Yep.
My number 6 is the most recent one, Long Night's Journey Into Day. As Pete was saying, Ray Alder left, and they bring in Evergrey's Tom England. I was apprehensive about this, even though I love Tom England's voice. I just didn't know fit-wise. But as soon as I heard it, the fears were allayed. I mean, it sounds good. I got no beef with it, the vocal end of it. But the songs at some point, it's a little bit of been there, done that for me. I feel like they didn't stand out the way that I had hoped. Maybe it's just fatigue from, they have 7 albums now. Maybe the well starts to run dry on the songwriting end, but I mean, it just didn't make me want to play it over and over like all their other albums have, basically. And as when I do listen to it, yeah, I like this, but then when's the next time I'm going to put it on? It's that kind of thing. So I have it in the 6th slot.
Yeah, it's my number 6 as well. I've had since it came out, so I can't believe it's 3 years already. It seems like this came out last year. I had to double check that. I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, did this really 2018? I'm like, shit. It seems like I was just listening to this and reviewing it last week. I remember when I first heard that Ray was leaving and that they were bringing Tom in. I'm a big Tom fan. I love Evergrey. He has got probably one of the best and most unique voices in metal out there. I mean, without a doubt. From the get-go, before I even heard a note of this album, I was really leery because I'm like, God, he's got such a commanding, not that Ray isn't amazing, because I love Ray, but Tom's voice is so kind of overpowering and saturated. I mean, it's like he is Evergrey to me. And my first fear was that he's going to come into Redemption, and all of a sudden, all of those characteristics we love so much about Redemption are gone, and it becomes Evergrey all over again, right?
Yeah.
And then they brought in Jacob Hansen to produce, who has been working with Evergrey for a while and does a lot of the European, metal stuff. And I was like, man, is this really going to change the sound of Redemption? Happily, I still think that there's a lot of Redemption elements going on here. It still, to me, in spots sounds like just kind of a slightly different Evergrey album, I guess. I don't know, but it's production-wise, it sounds spectacular. It's a really long album. There's a lot of material here, but I think Tom just brings in this element that I think has a tendency to overshadow a lot of everything else that's going on. Whereas I don't think Ray is that kind of singer. But that being said, and this Simone from DGM is also on here playing, some lead guitars, and Chris Poland's here as well. Both amazing guitar players. And then you got Sean Andrews and Chris on drums here. Some really good songs on here though. Eyes You Dare Not Meet in Dreams, completely smokes. Big riffs, dramatic keyboards. Someone Else's Problem is really good. It's really catchy. Yeah. Reminds me of Evergrey though. The Echo Chamber is absolutely crushing. Indulgent Colors got these kind of symphonic prog and goth elements again. Evergrey. The cover of New Year's Day by U2 is a lot of fun. All right, there's a couple covers here we've talked about on their last couple albums. I think is really good. The title track kind of closes out the album. Big and moody, a lot of big riffs and solos, and Tom's vocals are amazing throughout the whole album. For me, I think it's a really strong album. But does Tom's presence bring too much Evergrey into Redemption, a band that I think we all really love for their kind of uniqueness? I don't know. I guess that remains to be said. I mean, they're supposedly working on another one. So I'm going to kind of like hold off judgment on the status of Evergrey. See there, I went and said it. The status of Redemption till I hear their upcoming album. But I like this a lot. I do. I just don't know yet how it stands up to a lot of the other albums that we're going to talk about, which are, some of the best in progressive metal of the last 10, 15 years.
Well, one thing that helps the transition is that a lot of people don't know, but Nick writes all the vocal melodies. So, I mean, there is that uniformity there, even though the voices are different.
Yeah, there is that. I was kind of disappointed that Tom didn't play any guitars on the album. Tom's a fine guitar player, right?
Yeah.
And he could certainly do it. And if they decide to play live shows, I mean, he's had all these years playing and singing. So,
you got that the last DVD, right? I never did get it, Alive in Color. Yeah, I never did get it. And it's weird to see him just
standing there. Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, because Tom can shred, man. I mean, he's generally doesn't play the majority of the leads on the Evergrey albums, but he's perfectly capable. And yeah, it is kind of weird just seeing him do. And I think, I talked to him back, I don't know, a bunch of months ago, and he said it was kind of refreshing not to have to play guitar and just to concentrate on singing. So I guess he's kind of digging that. But he is, as fine a guitar player as he is, we think of him as that vocalist, right? Because he's one of the greats. So but I'm gonna, I like this album. I want to hear the next one to see kind of what that sounds like, because I think he kind of came into this album, I think, as it was already begun. So I think it'll be kind of cool to hear him with the band from the ground up on a brand new record. So but I still like it. And would I prefer Ray in the vocal slot? Probably.
Yeah.
But but if that's not going to be the case, then I'm willing to accept, because I love Tom and I'm willing to accept this going forward. So we'll see.
All right. My number 5, This Mortal Coil, 2011. This is the heavy album in the catalog. There was a definite desire to make the heaviest record they could make. They bring in my buddy Neil Kernan to produce, and they achieved it. It's heavy. I mean, maybe at the expense of some clarity in the mix. To me, it's a little muddy, but they got what they were shooting for. if you like the heavier end of prog metal, this is the one to get. It's great tunes on here. Blink of an Eye, especially. Love that song. And No Tickets to the Funeral. It's great melody from Ray. This one has a whole disc of covers that honestly I don't spin a lot, but there's some good picks on there you wouldn't expect. You have to check that out.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a consistent record, but maybe just the whole sound of it is a little not where I'm at with these guys. So I don't tend to spin this one as much as the others. So,
Yeah. Once again, we are on point. That's my number 5 as well. You know, this to me is a very dark record, obviously for a reason, right? I mean, Nick was going through the little cancer battle thing there, which was a really weird situation as it was. You know, it's like he's battling cancer. They're telling him he only has X amount of time to live. He's like, oh my God. Then all of a sudden he goes through treatment. They're like, okay, you're cancer free. You're fine. And he's had no issues since then. It's like, so you go from doctors telling you you're going to die to all of a sudden, no, you're fine. Right. Enjoy the rest of your life. And and it's really kind of weird, I think, for me, hearing Ray singing these very, very personal songs coming from Nick that are all about this battle and hearing all these things from the doctors and how to deal with, you know, all this shit that he was going through. So it's a really dark and depressing album. And I think the tone, like you mentioned, just kind of plays off of that. So it's like they're, you know, the big, bright, bombastic, symphonic, progressive metal redemption kind of is hiding on this album. This is just dark and heavy. This is kind of like their Train of Thought album by Dream Theater.
Oh yeah,
without the melodies though, right? Because this album is like just very dissonant and just
sludgy.
Yeah, big time. But that being said, the performances are spectacular as always. The guitar work is big and heavy and ballsy. Ray sounds great. I mean, Ray, you got to listen to him singing on Let It Rain and Stronger Than Death. I mean, he sounds fantastic. Departure of the Pale Horse is the big epic at the end, which is great. Path of the Whirlwind, you know, Dreams from the Pit, all really heavy, intense songs. But yeah, this is kind of lacking some of the subtlety of some of the other albums, but I think that was for a reason. And I think Nick really wanted to do this album to help himself purge that whole experience in his life. So I get it. Mission accomplished. I think it's still, for me, it sits right in the middle of their catalog. It's really good. I like it a lot. But it doesn't quite, for me, match the next 4 that we're going to talk about. And obviously I think we have both this, well, for the most part, except for one, we have the same ones on our top of it.
Yeah. My number 4 is The Fullness of Time, second album, 2005, the last one for Sensory Records. Like I said, after the debut, when I heard this, first of all, I was happy that Alder was on the whole thing instead of Rick. I like Rick, but Ray's definitely an upgrade.
Yeah.
And just the songs, I mean, as soon as I heard it, I was like, just a buoyancy that was not on the first one. And the production is better, of course, as you expect. The band going to their next record, production usually gets better. Although I don't know that production is a strong suit for this band in their history for the most part. I mean, it's getting better, but they don't, it's not like, you know, Haken production or something where it really hits you in the head. But yeah, Threads, Parker's Eyes. Parker's Eyes is another song. Ray had his problems, and he has his kid had a very weird degenerative eye disease that was battling there, and it's just one guy has so much stuff happening. It's kind of weird, but yeah, it's just a great record all the way through. Sapphire, another great song, and then it ends with a 4-part suite, the title track, Fullness of Time. But a very consistent record. Highly recommend this one.
I would say on the production end, I think Long Night's Journey into Day, the most recent album, I think Jacob Hansen's production is stellar, I think, on that one. And I think Snowfall on Judgment Day by Tommy Hansen is also really good. The rest of them are good productions, but not like
right
top of the line, you know. Yeah. I don't think they ever had a bad production on any of their albums, but you know, you probably wouldn't say they're like the best you've ever heard, you know. But cool. All right. I'm going to go again. The top 4 is hard for me, but I'm going to go with The Origins of Ruin from 2007, a Dynamite album. So this is the 3rd album. This is their first.
You got the sticker there. Stephen Reed would be proud of you.
I know, you know what it is. You can tell if I can zoom in. I tried to take it off, and it started to rip. So I just said, "Fuck it," and I just left it on there. But because normally what I would do is I'd just take this off and then switch it for another one. But yeah, I guess because it's so small, George, I just left it on there. Yeah, Steven, if you're watching, this one's for you, buddy. Um, and I tell you, if you have this and you don't have the sticker, I can I'll make you a deal, and I'll take the digipack here and or the jewel case cover, and I'll just mail it to you. You can do your thing, can steam it off, or however the hell you do that. I don't know. I could never be bothered with that kind of stuff. It's usually I usually my first instinct is to take it off, and then usually if it starts to rip, I'm like, screw it, and I just take the whole cover off and I put a new one on. So anyway, back to the third album, first for Inside Out Records. Here you got Sean Andrews taking over the bass from James Sherwood. So it's his first album with the band. You got, this is a highly enjoyable album, great songs, really, they're kind of up in the ante on the technicality and the intricacies of the arrangements. The Suffocating Silence is the first track on here, complete barn burner. Bleed Me Dry, lots of dark, heavy riffing and keyboards. The Death of Faith and Reason is so heavy. So heavy. Next to this album, I think this might have some of their, but God, even the second and third album are pretty heavy. There's actually a lot of really heavy stuff on these albums. What else we got on here? Memory is really good. Man of Glass, 10-minute closer, Fall on You is really melodic and has some, really good vocal textures from Ray. I don't know. This is a really, really good album. Could rank higher, but the top four for me are just so good that it's at times it's almost hard to distinguish. But look at they're even like promoting this, featuring Ray Alder, the singer from Fates Warning, and guitarist Bernie Versailles from Agent Steel. So they're actually promoting this as the super group that it is, which kind of is. I mean, not that Agent Steel was ever a really big band, but that they have it. That's kind of a name, right? So,
Yeah.
So that's my number 4. Great album. Great album.
Yeah, I agree. It's my number 3. To me, it's the first half is just incredible. The first 4 songs are, would probably make any Redemption playlist that you would make.
Yeah.
Like you said, the Suffocating Silence, that's the barn burner opener. And Death of Faith and Reason, that's the cruncher, man. That just whips you. But yeah, this when this came out, this dominated a good portion of my 2007, right? Yeah, 2007. This was a big record for me, and that's why I have it as high as number 3.
Yeah, that's a good one. My number 3 is going to be the debut from 2003. So I like this one a lot. It brings back a lot of good memories. I dug this quite a bit when it was first released, and I remember we promoted the hell out of this on Sea of Tranquility, reviewed it, and I remember having conversations with Ken Golden about how excited he was for this band. But again, like George said, this is kind of like the band figuring it out. A lot of guest stars. It's not an actual band at this point. So you got Rick on vocals, you got Jason from Symphony X on drums, sounds amazing on here. Nick and Bernie on guitars. Michael Romeo plays some keyboards. You got Mark Zonder plays a little drums on here. Ray Alder appears on vocals on one track. Little did he know that he would be joining the band not that long afterwards. You got the 4-part Desperation, the opening epic not title track, but the opening epic track is really cool. Lyrics all kind of come from the Stephen King story, which is kind of neat. I'm a big Stephen King fan, so that's kind of neat. You got Window to Space is nice and symphonic and melodic. You got Nocturnal, which is big and heavy. What else? As I Lay Dying is pretty cool. And then you got the 25-minute Something Wicked This Way Comes, which is, really neat track. Has nothing to do with the Iced Earth song, obviously, but a lot of tasty keys, dramatic vocals. And I think it's a really good debut, pretty good production too. And I think it really kind of shows where they're going to be going, and a lot of good epic moments on here. I think they would tighten up the arrangements on albums going forward, but I still have a soft spot for this album, so that's why it's ranking pretty high for me. But there you have it.
Yeah, I think my issue with it maybe is just that I like Rick, but he's just not the voice of Redemption,
No, he's not. He's a fine singer, but yeah, he's not quite. The vocals are good on this album, but once you start listening to the albums with Ray that come afterwards, you realize that he's really the singer for this band.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Right. And number two, Snowfall on Judgment Day. For me, their arc was each album gets better and better and better. And people say that about a lot of bands, but if you really look at it, that's usually not true. But for these guys, it was. So this was like the fourth album in a row that was even better than the last one. Walls is one of my favorite songs from the band, period.
Yep.
And so is Black and White World. That song, it's got a little Symphony X vibe to it, definitely. That's a song they drag out live too. It's a great live tune. You got a guest spot from James LaBrie on here because this is the first record after the 2007 tour was Dream Theater, them, and Into Eternity. I saw that tour. So you got a guest spot from LaBrie. You got an epic on here. I mean, this one pretty much has it all. And like you said, the production on this one is one of the cleaner productions they got. Real solid stuff. Yeah, this is my number two. Great album.
Yep, I agree. More on that later. Fullness of Time is my number two. Let's show off the guys there. Yeah, I this was almost my number one. In re-listening to this week, I was like, oh man, I forgot just how much I really love this album. And it's the second album. You know,
Yeah.
This is really good. This is pretty damn great, I think. You know, now it feels like a full band, not just a Nick and Bernie show type of thing. Ray is full-time singer here. Chris comes on drums. James Sherwood on bass. Man, Threads, classic symphonic progressive metal. Great song. Ray just kind of singing up a storm on this album. You got the guitars and the keys, you know, big and bright here. Parker's Eyes, like you mentioned, is really cool, really, very melodic, quite complex. The drumming is great on this album. Scarred is just absolutely blistering. Sapphire is one of the epics on the album, really awesome, good synth solos, a lot of good riffs. Rage, Transcendence, I mean, could be their best album any day of the week. I still think I like my number one just slightly better, but they're almost, it's almost a toss up for me. So that's my number two. Fullness of Time.
Well, obviously, surprising you with this one.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, my one in the last in line is your first in line. It's
Yeah,
like,
when often does that happen?
yeah.
This is definitely an outlier with the world at large. It's the second lowest rated one on Rate Your Music after the debut. I don't know what it is about it. The one thing I do appreciate, the way they recovered from having to cover Bernie's spot with the guest guitar players. I think it was a home run. Simone Molaroni is one of the best guys in metal right now, and he's a full-time member now. He's not a guest anymore, but he's still a guest here. Slouching Towards Bethlehem is one of the best guitar solos I've ever heard. I mean, it's something for people that haven't heard this band to go listen to. It's incredible. Hope Dies Last is, again, incredible guitar work. Chris Poland. He didn't just go out and get good guys. He went out and got guys that have a definite identity. Those guys, Chris Poland, if you can't pick him out, I mean, the guy has definite sound. 30 Silver is the one with all three Megadeth guys on it, which he said was not intended, but it just worked out that way. But you know, it was good, definitely good marketing to say you got three Megadeth guys on one song.
I know, right? Yep.
Yeah, the Great Who cover that just I respect the choice that he made to go out and get John Bush. You got Ray Alder, is a great singer, but he probably doesn't fit that song, so you go get John Bush. I mean,
John can do it. Yep.
Brilliant move. And the epic At Day's End, I love that. I think it's a great epic. But yeah, I just love this whole album.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, it's interesting how, you know, that was probably my least favorite, but yet I still said it's a really, really great album. So it's this order could change kind of almost any day. But I think my favorite overall is Snowfall on Judgment Day. To me, this is the band kind of hitting full maturity peak. You got Greg Husharian, who joins on keyboards for a couple albums. He's no longer in the band anymore, but he was there for a few years. Tony Hansen producing this album. I think this album sounds spectacular. I really like it a lot. I think the band is shifting towards more technical prog metal on this album. Peel, is absolutely intense. Man, I love bands who start off the album with like an absolute killer track, right? And these guys do it almost every album out. Drumming is just amazing. The riffs are just crushing. There's keyboards all over the place. Walls, like you mentioned, is absolutely stellar. I think the keyboards are playing a more important role here, and I have to wonder if Nick brought Greg on board because he wanted to, it's like we're going to get heavier and more technical on the guitar end, but we want the keyboards to be there just as much. So like, even though he plays a lot of keys on the album too, he brought in Greg to kind of add even more. So I thought that was kind of an interesting move, and I think it really works out. Leviathan Ryerson is just menacing and heavy. Love that track. Black and White World, I mean, just Ray is just so good on here. Unformed is really technical as well. Keep Breathing, nice and moody. I love James LaBrie. I think he sounds great on here on Another Day Dies. And Love Kills Us All. Life in One Day is a kind of cool epic to close it out. Half it's like instrumental, the other half has got vocals. I don't know, I think just a terrific album, really heavy progressive metal, really melodic. If I were to set someone on a redemption journey that's never listened to them before, I don't think I'd have an issue with steering them onto this one first, but you could pick any of them, right? For the most part. I don't know if there's any like real like specific gateway into this band. Like there's not, most bands people say, oh yeah, you should start off with this album. I would say pick any of these. I don't think it would matter too much, right? Because you're gonna get absolute quality. I would say don't pick the latest one first, because
debut.
And maybe don't pick the debut, but everything in between, like I would have no issues with either of these two or your pick also. I mean, with these, you get kind of like, these are the band, the band is really starting to, move off into, really what they were all about. I probably wouldn't settle them on this one first either.
Right.
So I think, I think probably for everybody watching, if you've never listened to Redemption before, I would start with The Art of Loss or The Origin of Ruin, or either one of these two. That's probably, I think, the best entry points for this band. But these are great too, as we've said. So you really can't go wrong. I just don't know if that's your good starting point, any of those three.
And I know we don't talk about live albums on ranking shows, but
oh yeah, that's great. Yeah,
this would be a good starting point too, because you got encapsulated all the early albums, the best of them, and the production on here is my favorite production actually that they've ever had. I think this album sounds great.
Yeah. And they've played at Prague Power a couple of times, and
I've seen them twice there.
Yeah. So the latest live album is also from Prague Power, and that's got Thomas Englund on vocals, although Ray shows up also on the bill, and he's there for a track or two, I think, if I remember correctly. So can't go wrong with this band. They are absolutely dynamite, and it's a damn shame that they don't come up in more conversations when people talk about like some of the best progressive metal bands out there, because they are one of them and have been since they first debuted back in, God, it's almost 20 years ago. Crazy.
It's mostly that people just don't know them. I mean, if they knew them and they heard them, they probably like them, but they just don't know them.
Yeah, which is, I mean, they're on, they've been on Inside Out, and now they're on AFM. It's like, I mean, they're on the labels that promote the hell out of everybody else. So I don't know.
They've been on the tours and on the bills. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what it takes, but
yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, progressive metal here, especially here in the States, is kind of a hard subgenre to really push. I mean, we can talk all day long about all the great prog metal bands that most people haven't heard of. In fact, the next ranking that George and I are going to do, which is going to be even tougher, is Vandenplas, and that's another band that's just like, one killer album after another, and nobody knows who the hell they are here. It's like, I think here in the States, it's like, if you're not Dream Theater, Fate's Warning, Queensryche, or Symphony X, or maybe even Camelot, right? Nobody really knows who you are, unfortunately, which is kind of a shame, because there's a lot of other good ones.
I thought sure when they did that tour with Dream Theater, they'd pick up a lot of fans, but I don't know if it happened.
Yeah, and to be honest too, they don't tour enough.
No.
Like one cool tour like that every 8 years or something is not really going to do it. And now you can't even tour with Dream Theater, because Dream Theater doesn't bring openers anymore, right? So it's just an evening with Dream Theater. So what other options do you have other than maybe getting on a tour with a Symphony X. But Symphony X has been playing with bands like Accept and Primal Fear. You know, Symphony X has been playing more in Iced Earth. They've been playing more with the power metal bands, which, you know, is good exposure for Symphony X, because Symphony X is not quite Dream Theater level yet. So, and it's got to be tough for Symphony X too, because they kind of straddle that line between power metal and progressive metal, you know, neoclassical metal, right? They're kind of a little of all of that. So I think for Symphony X to go out and get in front of a bigger audience, you know what, going out with an Iced Earth or an Accept or, you know, Primal Fear or some of these other bands, right, that's probably makes more sense for them. But for me, just speaking selfishly, how cool would it be to see a triple bill of Dream Theater, Symphony X, and Redemption? I mean, you know, for me, that'd be amazing. You know, or like an all day festival here with, you know, a couple of those bands and Van and Plaz, and, you know, I mean, we could come up with a ton of other different bands that we never see here, or very rarely. So,
see Van and Plaz at Prague Power too.
You have?
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's a talented band that with just these epic albums that are all just so good, and a killer frontman.
Yeah,
killer frontman. So, but that is a story for another day, everybody. So stay tuned for that. Now that we've given it all away, a little karaoke for you here today. Yeah, we're going to do a ranking the albums of Van den Plas, one of the great German progressive metal bands. That's coming up hopefully in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. George and I will have to get busy, and got a lot more listening to do, because
it's a bigger catalog.
Yeah, it's a bigger catalog, and like every album is like, or close to every album is like a concept album, 70 plus minutes long, and there's a lot to digest. And they're all, in my opinion, they're all like 4.5, 5-star albums out of 5. And so it's really tough when you, and you know, that was really no different than this one, but because you have more albums, it's really tough trying to kind of, you know, figure out, well, which ones do you like better? How would you rank them? That sort of thing, because they can't all be number one, right? So so that's coming up soon. So stay tuned for that, guys. And what else do we have coming up here on the channel? So tomorrow we've got a very interesting show on the Hudson Valley Squares. So tomorrow we're going to kind of deviate from the whole list thing for at least for a week, and we're going to start incorporating some more discussion type programs. So tomorrow it's all about and it's a concept you're going to see across various shows here on the channel going forward. We're going to take a look at some of these albums in rock and roll history where you had one album and one lineup that band had, and it was the only album that lineup appeared on. And we're going to talk about some of these albums and kind of put them up together with each other, and just kind of talk about, well, out of these kind of one lineup, one album wonders, what do we think of them? Did they work? Didn't they work? Which ones we like better, and why? Would we have liked that lineup to stay together longer, and why? That sort of thing. So coming up tomorrow on the Hudson Valley Squares, Black Sabbath's Born Again against Rainbow's Down to Earth. Okay, both albums feature that one lineup that we never saw ever again. So that's going to be the topic of conversation tomorrow night. Tuesday, George, you want to talk a little bit about what we got coming up on Tuesday on In the Prog Seat?
Yeah, we're doing the heck are we doing?
Title tracks.
Prog
rock and fusion and prog metal title tracks. So some of our favorites. So we kind of started this off on the Hudson Valley Squares a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to return back to it a week from tomorrow. But in the Prog Seat on Tuesday, we're going to strictly talk about some of our favorite prog metal and fusion title tracks. And we're going to try and make it interesting, and we're going to try and stay away from the most obvious ones. So for those of you who are already hearing this and you're thinking, oh, Close to the Edge and 2112 and Tarkus and all that, we're going to stay away from those, because otherwise we'd have everybody throwing out the same songs, right? So we're going to kind of do the not so usual, not the usual suspects, and we're going to try and go a little deeper than that, because quite frankly, there's a million great title tracks out there in just about any genre. So that's coming up tomorrow. We got a whole bunch of guests coming up on the show, so it's going to be a star-studded event. So stay tuned for that tomorrow. Wednesday is What's Hot with Sea Tranquility Day. Should have a couple of new album releases for you. Thursday is the Monsters Den, where Chris Allo and I are going to be talking about and reviewing the Camp Blood films. So that's Thursday, and then Friday morning at the Funhouse with Martin Popoff, and then of course Sunday is album homework assignment. By the way, George, you and Rand did a very good job here today on that. So congrats. That was a lot of fun. And
Thank you, scientist yet?
I did this morning. That's pretty good stuff. That's pretty good stuff. I like all the mix of weirdness going on in there, and I think the singer's pretty damn good. He reminds me of someone else, and I haven't been able to pinpoint it yet. But he's got an interesting voice, and yeah, there's a lot of good music going on there. So I was like, I like that. That was pretty cool. So there you have it, everybody. So rank the Redemption albums as you like them below. If you've never listened to them, please go check out a few of them and then come back and report and let us know what you think. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Of course, we're on YouTube all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content. The link to our Ko-Fi page is below as well for channel donations, as well as our merch page, which I'm wearing it and I haven't even talked about it. Look at this brand new Sea of Tranquility metal theme shirt. Play it loud. I mean, come on, for all you folks. And this was dedicated to Nick Franco, because our friend David, who does all of our merch, he wanted a shirt that would appeal to folks like Nick Franco, who love bands that have logos and shit that's kind of like, you know, what is that, right? So here we've got this kind of like black metal looking thing. It's really cool. It's really artsy. So check it out. It's available on the merch page. The link is below as well. What else? I guess that's it. For George Lamie, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow morning with Forgotten Favorites, and then, of course, tomorrow night on Hudson Valley Square. So we'll see George on Tuesday. So, George, see you then. Take care, everybody. Have a good rest of the weekend. Bye-bye.